Hello, my name is Chille Bergstrom. I work at MIT. I am MIT's space futurist, and I'm happy to be here. And I would like to introduce my friend and someone who I look up to every day, Shawna Pandya.
Hi, Chille. Thank you so much for having me on your interview today. I'm so excited for this.
From your perspective as a scientist, doctor, astronaut, and aquanaut, what are the connections you see between COVID-19 and climate change?
Yeah, Chille, that's a great question. So in my various experiences as a citizen scientist, astronaut candidate, aquanaut scientist, physician, I've been really lucky to see some amazing aspects of our planet and amazing aspects of humanity. And I've seen the best of us, but it also means that I get exposed to a lot of the problems that we don't think about on a daily basis. And at first glance, a pandemic, climate change, what's the connection? But the bottom line is they're threats to our survival. And so when we talk about really big problems and really big challenges, they're both right up there, top two on the list. And I think when we're in a time like this is the best excuse for us to band together as humans, as inquisitive minds, as explorers, to put the best minds together and put our curiosity together to keep ourselves safe, to find solutions, and to also keep us around for many, many generations to come.
You practice medicine in extreme environments. You've lived at the Mars Desert Research Station, and you have lived underwater for days at a time as an aquanaut. I can see you're in your scrubs right now and working in the clinic today. What did you learn while working in extreme conditions that prepared you for the extreme condition of COVID-19 right now?
Yeah, that's a great question, Chille, and I'm really glad you asked that. The top two things that come to mind are things that may seem so obvious, but actually have a lot to do with life in a pandemic and some perhaps strange times. And so the number one thing is our mentality or our attitude, because if we don't have the right attitude, we're defeating ourselves before we begin. So one of my favorite movies is The Martian, and Mark Watney just nailed it because he had that survival mentality. So mentality when we're in an extreme, isolated, confined environment, an ice environment is what we call them. The number one thing is having that mentality to set ourselves up to be resilient and deal with a difficult situation. So being grateful for the little things, breaking big tasks down. Those are some of the ways that we can help ourselves cope in a difficult situation. And then the number two thing is having the right team. So we may not innately think of being cooped up in isolation with our families as our team, but they absolutely are. And so what are we doing to make our teams better? Those are the top two things I would suggest based on my lessons learned underwater and at the Mars Desert Research Station.
So how can we use space to benefit life here on Earth?
Yeah, that's a great question that I get a lot. And, it's easy to think, okay, why are we spending all this money investing on going to space, pushing those boundaries when we have so many problems here on Earth with, poverty, with disparity, with disease? And the answer is, it may not be as different as you think. And in fact, medicine on Earth has benefited widely from space technology spin-offs that have actually done a lot of good things here on Earth. So we even use satellites for tracking migration, for tracking disease spread, for tracking wildlife populations. Breast cancer imaging has gotten better because of charge-coupled devices that were used on the Hubble telescope. A lot of what we've learned about nutrition, bone health, resistive exercise has all come from space. So actually, by exploring the great unknown, we do learn a lot about helping ourselves survive and thrive here on Earth.
I use history to predict the future, Dr. Pandya. So that means I look at the data. When I think of coronavirus, I think back to the tale of two cities during the Spanish flu, St. Louis and Philadelphia. One city closed down schools and banned public gatherings and focused on building new hospitals. That was St. Louis. Philadelphia did the opposite, and after they hosted a parade, 300,000 people, and did nothing. So what is the data we should be listening to now to inform our decisions?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a fantastic question, and I'm glad you asked it. And so there's that saying that those who fail to know history are doomed to repeat it. And so included in history is data. And so we need to know the trends of what is happening now and why it's happening. And so when we make decisions, it needs to be backed up by facts, by figures, by observations, by meticulous scientific methods. And history is part of that. And especially when we're dealing with something in some ways that's unprecedented, like coronavirus, it's not totally brand new. We've dealt with pandemics before. We've dealt with Zika and SARS and Spanish flu and Ebola, and there's many, many lessons learned that we can use based on the data and science that we've gleaned. So absolutely, this is the perfect time to be listening to those with expertise in the field, with those who have been epidemiologists, virologists, infectious disease experts, and letting their years and wealth of experience, like Dr. Fauci, who's leading the call on this, to let them help ourselves come out of this pandemic in as best as shape as possible.
Is it possible for great changes to be made that could create a more sustainable relationship between humans and the earth?
Yeah, absolutely. And so actually to answer your question, I'm actually going to tie everything that you talked about because it's so relevant. So the biggest question is, what is that relationship? What do we want that to look like? So you asked about visualization. So we as a species need to ask ourselves, what is the ideal? And then reverse engineer that, work backwards. They say that a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. And that's something that each and every one of us should be asking ourselves. What is our grand vision? How do we define it? And then what is something that each and every single one of us can do today to move towards that vision of sustainability, whether that is being more conscientious about our electricity and our energy usage, about how we recycle, about what types of energy sources we use, about moving towards solar. Each and every one of us has a role to play in this. So you nailed it. You tied it together perfectly in that we do have a vision to define, but we're all in this together, and it all comes down to each one of and every one of us committing to taking that first step.
And I would just like to thank everyone for watching this show, and happy Earth Day to everyone. And thank you, Shawna, for doing this show. And thank you for the people that are watching this. And thank you.